Welcome back to the Greenleaf Music Podcast, A Noise from the Deep. I'm Dave Douglas. Took a little break to go on tour in July. I'm so glad to be back in the States talking to musicians. This is Dayna Stevens, tenor saxophonist, multi-instrumentalist, composer, and band leader with his own label called Contagious Music. And I'll be talking to him about a bunch of his different records, about his playing, about the compositions, about the environment for labels and whatnot. And then in the extra, we talk about Joe Henderson, Isotope, and we had a lot of fun. So I hope you enjoy it. Please come and join us. Greenleafmusic.com is where you get all of these episodes, and you can subscribe to the entire catalog. It's a lot of records. It's all of my stuff since about 2004. And you can help us be a sustainable home for creative music and creative musicians. We have a bunch of new artists coming aboard this season, and I think you'll be really happy to hear all that music. But thanks for tuning into the podcast. And here is my conversation with Dayna Stevens. Dayna Stevens, thank you so much for joining me.
Man, thanks, Dave, for having me. I'm really, really honored to have this conversation with you.
Well, it's great to talk to you. And, we were listening to a record that I know now goes back a little ways. It's I guess, 8 years old, 2013. Common Occurrences from your Sunnyside record. And I had to learn this word in order to talk about your record. Maybe you should. So what's the title of the record, Dayna?
Well, the title of the record is called That Nepenthetic Place.
Okay. Good.
Is that how you had it?
That's how I sort of had it sussed out. But yeah, it's elusive. I mean, I want to start there because that's such an incredible piece, and I have some really specific questions. But I just also want to say you have a very recent release that we'll talk about later on where you're playing iwi, and it's a completely different sound. So I figured let's start here and then we'll work our way to Pluto Juice, the latest record, which is on your label Contagious Music, right?
Right on.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. So, but we'll get to this. So this tune, Common Occurrences, amazing band, of course, great composition. There's so much detail in there, and I know, again, this goes back a way, but
yeah, it's a bit of a way.
But there's some, there's some clear references, like Inner Urge. Obviously.
Oh yeah.
And then I hear a couple of other things where I'm not quite sure I can put my finger on it, but it seems like there's a few different. Can I use the word concatenations? Well, you said nepenthetic, so I guess I.
Man, where's my Google machine? Hold on a second. Well, I don't actually know that one, man.
You're one of the things that I find so amazing about your music, aside, of course, from the playing and your band leadership is that the compositions that always seem to have this feeling of unfolding, something opening up in a larger space. And it's often, as a listener, hard to anticipate where and when and how the opening is happening. And so I thought, just to ask specifically about this tune, how does Joe Henderson's Inner Urge come into it, and what else is in there that allowed you to create that matrix?
Yeah, well, this is funny. This tune ended up, well, it started off, I should say, being a reharm of Inner Urge. And that's where it started. I used to play the melody of Inner Urge over these changes. And then at some point when this recording was, an imagination, I thought, I really should write a melody to it and have it be kind of its own thing.
Well, it's definitely its own thing.
Yeah. And, and I kind of struggled with the melody, honestly, for a while. And then I figured, you know what, let me just record myself improvising over these changes for like 5-6 choruses and see what happens. And, this is GarageBand days before I even knew what Logic was. And I picked the lines out of that improvisation that I liked the most and kind of chopped it up. And I had never written a tune like that before, but that's how that one kind of pieced itself together. There were definitely a couple little notes that changed here and there, perhaps, but the improvisational feeling of the melody is literally improvisational. So
there's a lot of like starting in wildly unexpected parts of the beat, which I guess maybe came out of your improvising, but it's also doesn't maintain the strict form of Inner Urge. So at some point along the way, there were some changes made.
Yeah. I think it, I started thinking about intros or outros and how to end it. And I thought of repeating, those last 4 measures. It started off as like, I need to shed these last 4 measures because I don't even know how to play it properly. To play your own solo is actually not as easy as it, as it sounds.
Definitely.
And then I was like, but then I also wanted to have some drum action in there, a place to give Justin some room to blow. So it ended up as an intro and an outro. So, and then that's, I didn't want to, I guess I could have went into other sections but I wanted to keep it somewhat close to the original,
Well, it's, in the improvising form, in the structure, which in layman's terms, how the bars are laid out and what order they're in, and how does the band communicate with each other to stay in the same place and leave breathing room and come to appropriate resolutions and cadences. There's only a few places that I would identify purely Inner Urge chord changes.
Yeah.
Unless
the
I'm
last
really
8 measures.
Yeah.
That's where you really come to realize. But even there, I think the first chord of the last 8 is the same, but then it goes up to it goes up instead of going down, And honestly, when I do reharms, I try to keep it as close to the original changes.
Wow.
The reharm there, in some cases, it's the exact same. Actually, someone who knows Inner Urge could solo over this, and they would be hitting the right changes. I oftentimes move the bass note.
But we've never played together, so you
yeah, right. Man,
reserve judgment on whether that.
Yeah, man. So it's.
I still feel like I said earlier, this unfolding forms thing comes to bear, and anybody listening to this conversation, go find it on Bandcamp at Dayna's page or on YouTube, because there's something more to it. Like, I'll listen again thinking about what you said, but I still feel like Maybe it's the way Joe and Justin play that just opens it up, and it feels like there's spaces where it's sort of floating, and then boom, you're right back into it.
Definitely. I mean, Joe and Justin at that point played a lot together with Gerald Clayton's trio. And they had played together long before Gerald's trio even formed. So that was a purposeful, choosing with those two in particular. And Taylor, all of us have known each other since for over a decade by that point. So and those guys are just, and honestly, that was my first time really having Joe play my music. And that, honestly, he was the biggest surprise on that record for me. For me, the bass player is always the captain of the ship. They're, if they decide to play a different note, it's a different mood. If they decide not to play, and Joe is very open with where he chooses to play, what he chooses, and there was, I have these ideas of what the song sounds like, and he was reharming things. He was reharming a reharm, in some cases on this tune.
He moves around a lot rhythmically too, which makes the culprit in what I'm hearing. But I feel like still, Dayna, the composition, you gave them some solid gold material to dig into.
I appreciate that.
And it's great, and I want to get to how long you knew them when you did this, but I noticed that in 2013 you actually made 2 records that I know of, and they're very different.
Yeah,
and they both. I mean, I figure, it was probably, this is on a different label, so it was probably a time when, offers were coming your way, and you had the music to show for it. So, I think it's great. You got to make both of these albums. The other one was on Crisscross, I'll Take My Chances. With Joe is on it too, Joe Sanders, but everybody else is different.
That's right. I think I'm trying to remember because it's all so jumbled in the past there. I thought it was actually, so it must have been recorded between my first Today Is Tomorrow recording on Crisscross and the second one, but I think, that's right. I think Jerry kind of stuttered the release of it, and they kind of came out the same year.
Harry Teekins from Crisscross. Right. Yeah. You're right. I'm only looking at the release date, and sometimes the recording dates are not as close as.
Yeah, my brain, it all gets, because some of them take a couple of years, and then it's like you just totally get confused. But yeah, and it's funny. Same thing with it was a very different situation with Bill and Gerald and and
Charles Altura.
Charles, guitar.
And Becca Stevens sings.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, that was a highlight of that. So.
Well, let's listen to a little bit of this track that you sent me. Good Tree, Good Fruit. again, the unfolding forms thing is my big takeaway on a deep listening level. I feel like it's taking me places. It's not going in a predictable form. There's a whole breakdown in the middle of this piece. There's the way the drums sort of initiate what's happening, but the rest of the written material is really specific, and all the sonic elements between the guitar and the saxophone and the piano are really finely wrought. I guess that's not a question.
I appreciate it though. Yeah, man. No, that was a really fun record to make.
But I guess to ask the musical question, is that the way you think of it? Of unfolding, it's like getting the pieces to feel like they're not a repetitive structure.
Yeah. I've never thought of the word necessarily unfolding, but I think it's very accurate. Sometimes I think of it as, you have these predictable landing points, but then you have these surprise landing points.
Yeah.
But I want the surprise to be a welcome surprise, not an unwelcome surprise. So I'm always thinking of, it's all about the resolution. I'm thinking of different resolution points that still have common tones, but that unfold in a surprising way.
It's really interesting, and I'm thinking, based on what you're saying about it, that maybe what I'm hearing is that within the finite world of the piece, you've left it open enough that the resolutions can happen in different ways, surprising ways. So when I'm saying, I just hear this endlessly unfolding thing, it's really new interpretations in each iteration of an idea.
Yeah. And I haven't thought about this in a long time, but I remember seeing a video of Charles Lloyd with, at that point it was Billy Hart, and I think it's Anders. I can't remember his last name right now, but a great bass player from the northern European countries, from Scandinavia.
You're talking about Anders Jorman, probably.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I really related to the way, or was inspired by the way Charles was talking about how he leads the band. I mean, he really doesn't want to control too much and let the magic happen naturally and organically. So, I have all these somewhat complicated harmonic ideas, but at the same time, I really don't want to put too much control, for the players. I really do want to have it be a conversation between the players at the end of the day. And that's what drew me to the music is the conversation and the improvisation and the spontaneous moments, the surprising moments, those memorable moments that happen on all these records that that inspired me to play. So, I love the composition, but I also don't want it to hinder from the natural organic communication.
Right, and you mentioned that you've known all these. You're, at least in that period, the people you were playing with were people you'd known from California, I guess. So it's interesting you mentioned Charles Lloyd.
Yeah, right.
But everybody sort of in that circle was it Berkeley?
Kind of all around the Bay. I mean, Taylor's from the peninsula. But yeah, actually Joe's from Milwaukee, but he was attending the at the time with the Brubeck Institute in Stockton. So and Joe was also in that same group. So that's and I was kind of back home for a while during the summers, and we all linked up and.
That's great. That's great. Because I think that's probably a big part of it, that you sort of came up together in that space. And so you have that deep connection. I want to go to 2015, where you invited Walter Smith III to play on your record with a similar cast, right? Well, I guess it's mostly new folks. Some
Similar
still,
instrumentation, yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, Rodney Green and Harish Raghavan and Aaron Parks, who has been on a few of my records.
yeah,
Um, I'm missing
yeah.
someone.
Mike Moreno
Mike Moreno, yeah. And yeah, that's
and WS3. So,
yeah, WS3.
well, I want to talk about the having a second tenor player on the record, but the name of the tune is Uncle Junior. Can you explain?
Yeah, my grandfather, who I dearly miss, he was a junior, and to everyone outside of his immediate family, who I got to know, sporadically through my childhood, everyone I met through the years called him Uncle Junior. So,
Wow.
so it's really for my grandfather. Yeah.
And any significance to bringing in Walter for this particular set of pieces?
Well, Walter's we went to college together at Berkeley, and I've always been a huge admirer of his playing. And we played a lot back in those days, and even when he was in LA, and there's plenty of tenor records where it's like the dueling tenors, but I kind of thought of it like the French horn section in an orchestra. They're always playing together, and it's a thing, it's a sound having even in unison, but sometimes in thirds or whatever. So I was kind of thinking of this whole record in that kind of fashion. But the horn section taking the lead.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like a tenor battle. And,
I was hoping not.
And you do feel like you're hearing two personnel and two distinct voices on the instrument. So it's really nice. Let's hear a little bit of Uncle Junior. Wow, that is so great, Uncle Junior. Thank you. So, Walter Smith III, having another tenor player, you talked about it a little before we heard it, and then I think it's so clear to hear the conversation and just the two voices, and I just I know the tenor is very dear to you, even though you just released an Iwi record. But I'm wondering, like, any other tenor players important to you? I guess we mentioned Joe Henderson a long time ago.
Yeah.
But like, okay, people that we all should know that might have been important for you, or that might surprise us to know were important for you, or maybe people we don't know, contemporaries that somebody listening to this conversation might want to go check out?
Yeah. Well, coming from that perspective, maybe the lesser known folks. I mean, Chris Cheek's a big influence on me. Ralph Moore. A lot of people don't know Ralph. You know, a lot of the youngsters don't know who Ralph Moore is. It's depressing. Tina Brooks. Let me think here. There's a few that I can put in that category. Matt Otto.
Oh,
I don't know
wow.
if people know this cat, but
Sure.
geez, my knees. What a beautiful lyrical player. I really love that cat. Let's see. Man. Oliver Nelson, you know, a lot of cats don't listen to Oliver Nelson, but what a player. And actually a lot of people don't realize, but I'm a huge Brecker fanatic. I have to limit, like, I have to specify times where I'm listening to Brecker, because it will be overwhelming.
I know it's nerdy, but just to clarify, he's talking about Michael Brecker, everybody.
Oh, did I? Yeah.
Yeah, I should go without saying, but anyway.
Well, shit, man, that's bad too, man, no doubt.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's
but
great.
Speaking of horn players, yeah.
I mean, would you say Joe Henderson was somebody that was really important for you?
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
I mean, the obvious one. Well, the ones
Sam
that
Rivers,
we all know. Man, love Sam Rivers.
Yeah.
But I think Sonny was really the one that brought me into the music.
I'm talking about Sonny Chris.
Sonny
right?
Rollins. Sonny Chris is a no, I'll forget that cat. But my dad bought me when I first started playing tenor. He bought me the bridge.
Oh, wow.
That was like the first thing I owned, and to this day, it's still my number one Desert Island record. Sonny, just the mix of humor and seriousness. As serious as a heart attack, but then these moments of his sound, the arrangements, just the sound of that record. It's, I don't know, man. It's like the quintessential jazz record for me, from my perspective, growing up. I mean, it's, I didn't hear Kind of Blue or Giant Steps for years after that. Mm-hmm. That was the one that still touches me the most.
Wow.
Yeah. So, Sonny, Train,
right.
But and Train hit me hard when I
sure
got into him, of course. Wayne, Wayne's a big influence on me. Wayne Shorter, I should say. I'm sorry, I should have. Wayne Brady.
Yeah.
And
Wayne Shorter. I know who that is.
Yeah. I should mention that baritone is also like a huge.
I was just going to ask, because I know you play a lot of other instruments.
Yeah, baritone. I mean, if I had to choose one axe, honestly, out of the saxophones, I'm probably most comfortable in tenor because I play it more. But baritone's really my favorite of all the saxophones.
Huh.
And Jerry Mulligan was one right next to. It was the next record I got was a Jerry Mulligan record.
Wow.
Live at Carnegie Hall with interesting band: Ron Carter, Harvey Mason, Dave Samuels, Bob James, super young John Scofield, 1975.
I don't know that record at all. What's that? What's the name of it? Live at Carnegie Hall.
Live at Carnegie Hall, and Chet Baker. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's a mixed deck.
It's really interesting. But as a kid, I'm like, I saw a baritone on the cover. I was like, I want to hear that. And he bought it for me. And it was, the one.
That's fantastic. So, but you play bass and
I play
piano and
upright. Yeah.
And
I love piano.
So you're going to stay away from the brass family, right? Or oh God!
Trumpet right here. No, but it's never leaving the house. Believe you me, you're cool.
So this is an audio format, so people couldn't see. But swiveled his screen, and there's a whole bunch of instruments back there, including a trumpet. I'm much chagrined to learn. I'm going to have to come over and practice with you sometime, man. Trumpet.
Show me some
Unforgiving.
stuff, man.
Yeah. Well, that is so cool. I'm going to scooch up a little closer to the present because
Yep.
I mean, it's been such a weird year and a half, 2 years for all of us, and you've been really active during this time and made a lot of stuff. Some was made before the lockdowns, and boy, what a crazy thing. But you made a studio trio album called Liberty, that came out during that time, and then I guess it must have been right before the lockdown, you did a week at the Village Vanguard and recorded it. And you added Aaron Parks to the band. And it's a really well documented collection of music. So I thought I would just play something from that.
Sure.
I think it's your tune, Ran.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's hear that. Live at Village Vanguard right now. It's on your own label, Contagious Music, and it's funny. I've listened to it a number of times, and that time after having listened to everything else we just learned, this has like a real classic feel to it. You know, it starts just with the piano, very nonchalant, easygoing, and he's sort of humming to himself, and the band comes in, and it's just a beautiful intro, and it made me think of that space, the Vanguard, and not only the past magic of the Vanguard, but sort of that feeling when you're up there, and it's high pressure.
Oh yeah,
but it's also like a cushion, like how an oyster makes a pearl. Kind of.
Totally. Totally, man. That's a great illustration. And I think these, I've got to give it to Tyler McDermott and
My man.
Chris Allen for their production, recording, and mixing and mastering with those guys. It's, I mean, you're there. The sounds just. I'm really happy with how they did that. And yeah, that place, the Vanguard, man. It's so the first video I ever saw was of Johnny Griffin's quartet there with Kay Wash and Ray Drummond and Ronnie Matthews. And boy, I don't know, I think I may have it here somewhere, but it's on YouTube now. But I wore that thing out, man. I that was my window into the New York jazz scene, the mecca of this music we're talking about. And so, that was a very special week, man. It was hard for me not to think of my childhood and my grandfather and all these things.
Wow.
So, and I think that particular night, my mom came out and surprised me from the West Coast. I thought, I didn't know any family was going to come, but she came out that night.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It was a real special night. So, yeah.
Was everything captured on that same night? Or
it was Saturday and Sunday, but most of the record came from Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah. And that particular set, that last set when they came.
And you had released a studio trio album, so what made you decide to add Aaron to the live date?
Well, funny enough,
not that there's anything wrong with Aaron Park.
Well, I had already booked the date for the Vanguard, and then afterwards decided I want to do a studio trio record at Rudy Van Gelder's, and that happened. And then it wasn't until a week or so after, which was 2 weeks before the Vanguard, that I was like, man, I wonder if we could record. and then it happened. So they were recorded a month apart from each other, and they were planned to be as they were, but
that's
the
great.
opportunity came up, and
that also for me raises the topic of having your own label to release things on. That you can just make that decision. You don't have to go justify it to somebody. You can just be like, we should record this too. Okay, great. So, and you've been doing Contagious Music for how many years now?
Well, the first record on Contagious Music was 2007. That's my debut.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
Then,
I spaced on that. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's all right. It's all right. And then nothing really until it kind of stayed, I did things for other labels. Actually, I should mention, the reason why there's quite a bit of a prolific period there between 2010 and maybe 2015. I was on dialysis actually, and time and just getting things out was just I was just taking every opportunity to record as I could.
Wow,
just for
documentation's
sake,
and not knowing. It felt more urgent, maybe.
It felt a lot more urgent, honestly, because I know the percentages of people in that situation of getting through it. I'm lucky that I got through it, honestly. And so the first record after that period, I then put out on my label again. That was the second record, I think. Gratitude was that second record, and then the rest kind of fell after that. So,
and how do you like it running a jazz record label?
It's interesting.
It's
yeah, right. How long you got here? Huh?
Exactly.
It's been. I like having knowing all the nuts and bolts of how it works. I do like that. It obviously there's a plus and minus to every avenue that we take in our lives and every aspect of our lives. So it does obviously, as you know, take time.
Yeah.
So there's that element. Right now, I'm really in the in a transition period, figuring out what I want to do, how if I want to continue expanding or maybe go with another label. So I'm I'm in this mindset of trying to decide which direction to go.
Things to
but
come.
The label, yeah, things to come. The label I think will continue in some shape or fashion. It's just how much time do I want to spend doing that versus with the pencil in my hand writing. Or,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think in this age that there's so many more options in terms of the distribution and how we want to get it out. Like I saw that you have a really well-developed Bandcamp page, and I think that's great, and a store through your own site, and I'm sure that Contagious has other avenues for distribution, and that's not going anywhere. If anything, that's just getting deeper.
Yep. Yep.
And I saw, I think some of the records that you made for Sunnyside are now also available at your page, at your Bandcamp page, which I think it's a great thing, because all those records, it's like your children. You want to be able to have access to them, and I've found, I mean, I don't know. It's an ever evolving game, and every 6 months, as a label, we have to sort of regroup and go, okay, well, what's happening now? And I'm sure it's the same for you, but I think it's great that you've created those outlets to put out that music. I mean, Pluto Juice, this brand new one that came out in July of 2021, it's a whole new animal. You're playing a whole new instrument, but also the cast of characters is entirely new, and the sound of it is entirely new. Electric bass, electric guitar, and the EWI, electronic wind instrument, is well, it's got an infinity of possible sounds that you can play with, but you're still using breath to create them. Yeah. And then actually, little behind the scenes thing here. You sent me a track, and I was like, "Well, wait a minute. There's like somebody playing keyboards on this," and you were like, "Oh no. The iwi is a polyphonic instrument, so a lot of like the chord playing and the comping is you." Yeah. And it's a great statement. I can only think that this has been some time coming. Right? Didn't just.
Yeah, it has been. I first got the iwi in 2007, and I'm gonna be honest, it didn't leave the house for 5 years because it took me a while to kind of get used to it. But slowly but surely, I've just kept adding little pieces to it, and now it's actually maybe overgrown what I really should probably pare it down to. At this point, my setup is. You don't see it here, but it's kind of enormous and taking over the floor here.
Pedals and extensions and
just spaghetti all over the floor here in black. So it's a total different instrument than saxophone. The only similarities really are maybe 80% of the fingerings. Other than that, it's really its own animal. Yeah. It's much quicker than the saxophone. The range is, quadruple the saxophone.
Yeah.
Its functionality, there's bands where I play bass. Actually, I played with Cecile McLaurin Savant's band a couple months ago, and there's a couple songs where I'm playing iwi bass.
Nice.
There's no bass player in the band, so I kind of fill the lower role, which obviously you can't do on a regular saxophone, or not with any,
right.
without really covering that range. And then there's the textural possibilities, which honestly is the most overwhelming part of it. And having to kind of narrow it down to a sound. On saxophone, it always sounds like a saxophone, but really kind of developing, and it started off with one sound that's kind of loosely evolved into a couple of different sounds, but then I got this new pedal actually right after the recording of Pluto Juice that's just added a whole new thing. It's just Anyway, it's an endless pit of possibilities.
Yeah.
In terms of textures, and I could spend hours and hours at it and feel like a kid. It just doesn't
I can imagine.
end with the sound design, So.
I can imagine. But I think as an outside listener, and when I first put it on, I didn't have the information in front of me. So I was just coming at it like a baby, just innocently. And I was like, okay, well, it's got to be Dayna. But the thing that made me sort of figure out what it was the breath.
Yeah.
That you're still essentially creating the tones using air.
Yeah.
And so that creates a certain vocal quality to the phrasing. And that was the thing that I was able to sort of identify and go, oh, okay, I see. That's Dayna, but he's playing some sort of different instrument here.
Yeah.
And I went and looked it up and did my research. Duh. But but it's really fantastic, and everybody should go check it out. Mainly at the Bandcamp site, right? Is that where we want to send people? Dayna Stevens.
Yep. /Bandcamp, something like that.
Yeah. And it's fantastic. Thank you so much for talking to me about the music. There's so much more I'd want to ask you. And I really do hope we get to play sometime.
Man, no kidding. I'm
let's
a huge fan, man. I would be honored. Seriously.
Let's get this Delta variant behind us and get out there and make some music.
Yeah.
Dayna's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. It's a real honor, man.
Great
I really appreciate it. Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks for listening to this podcast, my conversation with Dayna Stephens. Visit greenleafmusic.com for all the episodes, and please think about subscribing and signing up, getting the whole catalog. Thank you so much for listening. The extra, again, we talk about Joe Henderson and Isotope, and it's a lot of fun, so come on over and check it out. Thank you so much. Bye.